All right, let's talk about one of the most critical parts of any audit, confirming accounts receivable. It sounds straightforward, right? But there are some huge mistakes people make, mistakes that can literally make the whole thing completely worthless. So, today we're going to break down how to do it right and, just as importantly, what not to do. Let's dive in.
Okay, so let me ask you something. If you're an auditor and you need to be absolutely sure a number on the books is real, what's the best evidence you can get? Like the most powerful, most convincing proof possible. Think about it for a sec. Yep, if you were thinking external confirmation, you nailed it. This isn't just a good idea. The official auditing standards, ISA 505 to be exact, basically call it the gold standard. And it makes sense, right? You're getting proof directly from an independent outside source. For accounts receivable, it's perfect. It hits two massive assertions: existence, does this debt even exist, and accuracy, is the dollar amount correct?
But here's the crazy part. That gold standard evidence, it can be rendered completely useless. I mean worthless. If you don't do this procedure with absolute precision and control, you've basically wasted your time. So, what are these critical mistakes that can turn solid gold evidence into dust?
Okay, so check this out. These are the big ones. First up, letting the client mail the confirmation letter for you? No way. That just torpedoes your independence. Or how about this? Not verifying the customer's address. You could be getting a reply from literally anyone. Then there's the classic mistake of only sampling the biggest dollar amounts, which means you could be missing all sorts of other risks. And, maybe the worst of all, getting no reply and just shrugging your shoulders. These aren't just little slip-ups. These are deal breakers that make the whole test invalid.
So how do we avoid these traps? We need a bulletproof game plan, and that's exactly what we're going to walk through. First, we'll talk about the high-stakes game. Then we'll cover how to know your population. After that, we'll get into a smart sampling strategy, followed by the nuts and bolts of execution and response handling. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with a final conclusion.
All right, Section 1, the high-stakes game. So why is this such a big deal? Well, you have to remember, accounts receivable is a super high-risk area. It's tied directly to revenue. Is that revenue even real? Are the amounts right? Does the company actually have the right to collect that money? The stakes are high.
And here's something you absolutely have to get. Not all receivables are created equal. They have totally different risk profiles. Think about it. When you're looking at related parties, the number one risk is intentional manipulation. Window dressing to make the books look good. But with your regular, everyday third-party customers, the risks are usually more about mistakes. Things like cutoff errors, incorrect balances, or maybe disputes that haven't been recorded yet. You gotta know your counterparty.
And that understanding of risk flows right into our second section. Know your population. This is so important. Before you even think about picking a sample, you've got to slice and dice that entire AR listing. You need to know where the monsters are hiding.
So, what are we looking for? Well, some groups should set off alarm bells right away. Of course, you've got your large customers, that's a given. But you also need to zoom in on old, overdue accounts. The ones over 90 days. Are they even collectible? Any customers with known disputes are a huge red flag. New customers, too. You have to wonder if the company's credit policy is working. And don't forget foreign customers, because then you're dealing with currency risk and timing issues. All of these need a closer look.
Okay, once you've mapped out all those high-risk areas, you're ready for Section 3, building a smart sampling strategy. And listen, this is the key takeaway here. It's not about just grabbing a random percentage of the total balance. It's about being strategic. It's about making sure your sample covers your biggest areas of risk.
So what does that look like? It's a simple four-step process. First, define your purpose. What are you really testing for? Existence? Accuracy? Rights? Step 2, determine your coverage. This has to be based on risk, not just value. 3, and this is so important, build a clean population list with verified contact information. And finally, step 4, select your samples. You're going to use a mix. You'll use your judgment to pick those high-risk items, and then maybe use random selection to cover the rest.
Now, speaking of sampling, there's one group where sampling is completely off the table. For related parties, the rule is 100%. You test every single one. No ifs, ands, or buts. 100% coverage.
All right, planning is done. Now for the main event. Section 4, execution and response handling. This is where the rubber meets the road. And I'll tell you right now, the key word here is control.
This right here is the non-negotiable golden rule of confirmations. The client can help you pull the list together. That's it. From that point on, the auditor
and only the auditor, sends the letters, gets the reply sent directly back to them, and verifies everything. If that chain of control is broken at any point, your evidence is tainted. Period.
So the confirmations go out, and now we wait. You're basically looking at 3 possible outcomes. Let's start with scenario A, the easy one. They agree. The customer sends the confirmation back, and the balance matches perfectly. Awesome. All you have to do is check that it came directly to you, document it, and you're done. Easy peasy.
Then we have scenario B. They disagree. The customer replies, but the numbers don't match. Now, the first instinct might be to panic, but don't. This is not a problem. It's actually really good audit evidence. Now your job is to play detective. Why is there a difference? Is it just a payment in transit, a timing issue, or is it a real dispute? Whatever the reason, finding out tells you a ton about your client's processes.
And that brings us to scenario C, the one that gets mishandled all the time. They don't reply. You send the letter out into the world, and you get nothing back. Crickets. So, what now? This is a make or break moment for your audit work.
And let me be crystal clear, because the auditing standards ISA 505 are, this is a direct command. It says, if a confirmation isn't returned, the auditor must perform alternative procedures. See that word? Must? It's not optional. You can't just write no reply in your work papers and call it a day. That's a failure.
So, what exactly are these alternative procedures? Well, the absolute best one is checking for subsequent cash receipts. I mean, if the customer paid the bill after year-end, that's pretty powerful proof the debt was real, right? You can also go back to the source, vouch the original invoice to things like shipping documents, delivery orders, or the original contracts and POs. You're proving the sale actually happened.
Now, let's talk about what is not an alternative procedure. You can't just take an internal statement of account from the client and call it good. That's not independent at all. You can't accept a verbal confirmation from someone at the company. And I'll say it again, you absolutely, positively cannot just skip it. None of those count.
Okay, so that brings us to the home stretch, our 5th and final section, the final conclusion. This is where we take everything we've gathered, all the replies, all the resolved variances, all the alternative procedures, and we tie it all together into one strong, defensible conclusion. And to know your conclusion is solid, you need to be able to check off these 5 boxes. 1, did you have adequate coverage? 2, was your response rate high enough? 3, did you properly test all the non-replies? 4, are all the discrepancies fully explained and resolved? And 5, did you step back and look for any weird patterns or potential fraud indicators? If you can say yes to all 5, you're in a really good spot.
So, let's boil this all down to the ultimate cheat sheet. 5 things you absolutely never do. 1, never let the client send the confirmations. 2, never use an address you haven't independently verified. 3, never forget that related parties are their own special category that needs 100% testing. 4, never, ever, ever skip alternative procedures for non-replies. And 5, never conclude a balance is correct based only on an internal client document.
And that leaves us with the big question. When you've done all this, when you've followed the process, maintained control, and chased down every last detail, can you look at your work and say, yes, my audit conclusion is absolutely bulletproof? Something to think about. Thanks for watching.